beg your pardon. Yeah, its question speaks for itself, Minister. I'm very concerned about what has happened to the demand for a public inquiry into the death of Shane Farrell. This is something that has been brought before the previous Dáil many times, and I'd like to see what progress has been made on it.
Thank you, Deputy. At the outset, I would like to offer my condolences to the family of the late Shane O Farrell. I understand that he was an exceptional young man, and his death 9 years ago at the age of 23 really was a terrible tragedy. As the Deputy will be aware, and I know that the Deputy has raised this a number of times, and she raised it previously with me in the Chamber, a retired Judge, Gerard Houghton, is currently conducting the scoping exercise into the tragic circumstances surrounding Shane's death. The Judge furnished an interim report to my predecessor, Charlie Flanagan, last November, and then following consultation between the Judge, with Shane's family and the Attorney-General, the interim report was published on the 17th of December in 2019. In his interim report, the Judge stated that he would not restrict, that he would not limit Shane's family in their submissions to him or the nature and the extent of the documentation that they wished to furnish to him in this scoping exercise. Just to say to the Deputy, my department maintains regular contact with the Judge. He has assured us that any assistance that is required to complete the final report that he will ask for it, and we will of course make it available to him. However, given the COVID-19 restrictions, the Judge has recently informed my department that it is likely to be mid-December before he will be in a position to conclude the scoping exercise. I can assure the Deputy that this is of course open to the Judge to make any recommendations that he sees fit in his final report, and this includes the establishment of any form of statutory or non-statutory inquiry, so he is not precluded in any way from proposing that. I hope that the Deputy will appreciate that it's only appropriate that I would await the recommendations of the final report of the scoping exercise before making any decision in relation to further inquiries into this matter, but just to say that I do hope that we will have this before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Deputy Smith.
That would be wonderful if we could have it before the end of the year, because I just remind the Minister, not that you probably need reminding, but for the record, Shane O Farrell was killed on the 2nd of August 2011. So we're coming into the 10th year of the anniversary of his death, and you're aware, and all of this House are aware, the efforts that his family have gone through to get an inquiry, to get justice. There's a huge amount of question marks over what happened with the killer, his own criminal record, and the fact that he was at large when he probably should have been incarcerated. There were many jail sentences on his list of other breaches of legislation, both north and south, that he was guilty of. And so for 9 years, Lucy O'Farrell in particular and the rest of her family have been campaigning extremely hard. It was on the 14th of June in 2018 that this House passed a motion put by a member of government, Jim O'Callaghan, to demand an open public inquiry into the events leading up to Shane O Farrell's death. And it was on the 13th of February in 2019 that the Seanad did likewise. So the two houses of the Oireachtas have called for this, and we're still waiting. I think, we can't keep hiding behind COVID. There's a lot of work can be done online, and we need to progress these things. So if you're given a commitment that something will be brought forward by the Judge by the end of the year, then I think we should all hold you to that. And by that I mean the family and the Oireachtas, because the entire Oireachtas, both houses, have voted for this to happen, and we're still waiting.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. I am informed that it is likely it will be mid-December, so I do hope that we will receive it then, and that is the timeline that I will set and that I will ask the Judge to stick to. The most important thing for me here is that the family get answers to the questions that they have, and the reason that we have set out this scoping exercise first is to see whether or not a public inquiry would bring about those answers for the family. And I understand that there have been many motions here, but I think until we have the answers to this current scoping exercise, essentially, it's hard for me to say whether or not the Judge will recommend that. But just to be very clear, as Minister in this government, we're not objecting to an inquiry if that is what is recommended in this report. But I think it's important that we see the report before then. But just to stress, the most important thing here is that this family get the answers that they want, and I hope that we can get them for them, but most importantly that they can feel somewhat at peace, because this has been a very challenging almost 10 years, as you've pointed out, for them, and to lose a loved one in those kind of circumstances, I can only imagine must be extremely difficult. So I will do everything that I can to ensure that they do get the answers that they want. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Deputy.
One last remark is that I sincerely, like everybody else, really care about the family and that they get closure and that they find out what happened to Shane and why. But there's also a matter of public interest here, because the wheels of justice turn in many strange ways, and I think when you know a little bit, even a little bit about this case, there are so many questions to be asked. So I do think it's a matter of just public interest and not just personal interest to the family, that we have an inquiry to find out exactly what happened. Because it was Shane O Farrell 9 years ago, it could be anybody else tomorrow. If there is a question mark about how this criminal was dealt with, why he wasn't incarcerated, and what led to the events that killed a young man and took his life and his family's basic existence away from them on that day. So I think when we get the answers, and the sooner we get them the better, it will probably ask more questions about how this justice system works than it answers. And that's why it's important for everybody in this country to see how, as I say, the wheels of justice turn, rather than just it being confined to the O'Farrell family. But of course, they're of the utmost concern here. But it does open and provoke many more questions about what happens within the system.
Thanks, Deputy Minister.
Again, I suppose it's difficult for me to preempt what may or may not be in this report, but I have every confidence that Judge Shawton will carry out his work, will take all of the information and the evidence that is available to him, and will bring a decision and include that in the report by the end of the year. But again, I just want to offer my condolences to the family of Shane O Farrell, and to say that I will work with them irrespective of what comes out of this report, and we will follow through as soon as possible. Thank you.
Very much, Minister.